Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today with another video. The topic of today's video is going to be on the NBA trade deadline, which as most people know has passed. It was yesterday afternoon was the end of the deadline. So a lot of trades went down, quite a few notable ones. You know, there wasn't like that signature blockbuster trade that people look for at the trade deadline. I think this year the one that people were looking for was an Anthony Davis trade. That one didn't happen, but you still had a lot of notable players being moved and a lot of interesting things happening. So I'm going to go through some of the. I'm not going to go through trades specifically, actually. I'm going to go through the teams and like what they did. So I'll give you an example here. So the first team I have, obviously, starting at the beginning of all the teams, would be the Philadelphia 76ers. They acquired Tobias Harris, I think 2 days before the trade deadline. They also acquired James Ennis and then Jonathan Simmons. And then who they got rid of was Markelle Fultz, Mike Muscala, Landry Shamet, Wilson Chandler, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks. So looking at how the team did overall, do I like getting Tobias Harris? Yes, I do. I think it makes them stronger. I think they now have a big four and an impressive. Uh, I don't know if it'll be their starting lineup. They could close with this lineup, but I think like their crunch time lineup will obviously be Simmons, Redick, Butler, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid, which I think is a super powerful lineup to have on the court at the same time. You got increased spacing with Tobias Harris shooting over 40% from three, and he adds to spacing that Mike Muscala couldn't consistently bring, nor Wilson Chandler, and of course not Amir Johnson, who doesn't shoot from the outside. So you improve that way. As far as depth, I like the addition of James Ennis. He's a good backup wing for them. And then also, oh, I forgot they got Marjanovic as well, and Mike Scott. Those guys will back up Harris and Embiid at the 4 and the 5. And then they also got Jonathan Simmons for Markelle Fultz, who will be a good backup point guard or shooting guard. I'd say he's actually slightly better than TJ McConnell. Like TJ McConnell might be having a slightly better season, but I trust Simmons more in that he's taller, he's more athletic, and I would just prefer him to TJ McConnell myself. But yeah, that's like a review of what happened for Philadelphia, who they got rid of and who they gained, and what I thought of all that. So that's sort of what I'm going to do with some of these other teams going forward, notable teams for the trade deadline. The next one is the Bucks, who essentially traded Thon Maker and Jason Smith, and then got in return Nikola Mirotic. I really like this trade. So actually, it's two separate trades, but basically what they got for Thon Maker, they flipped really quickly for. Um, they flipped really quickly to get Mirotic. Mirotic is averaging 17 points a game, 38% from the 3-point line. I think he mixes in really well. He can play power forward and even a tiny bit of small forward if you need him to. It's just more spacing for Giannis. They're kind of going with the 4 shooters and Giannis on the court at the same time, much like you saw in Orlando with Shaq, or not Shaq, Dwight Howard and the 4 shooters. They're kind of going with that system. Of course, Giannis isn't a post-up guy. He's more of a cutter and a driver to the lane, but it's the same sort of principle. Like one guy works inside and 4 working from the outside. So they're just adding to that whole concept with Mirotic on the team. So I like the trade a lot for them. The Bulls traded, let's see here, they traded Jabari Parker and Bobby Portis in exchange for Otto Porter Jr. I think it's a pretty decent trade for them. Otto Porter, I think, is playing better than either of those guys that they traded, although he has a longer contract and he is in for the next 2 years, I think. He is a better player than both those guys, and you're not really giving up that much for your team by acquiring him. But that's really it for them for the most part. The Cavaliers, they did a lot of trading at the deadline, but none of it's really that consequential, I don't think. They acquired a few young pieces like Marquise Chris, and then they acquired Wade Baldwin and Nick Stauskas, but then they traded those guys away again. They also got Brandon Knight and Houston's first round pick, I think next year or in 2020, I believe. Um, they did a lot of trades. They sent away Alec Burks to the Kings, but they really didn't get anything that notable in return. Just I felt like nothing that'll really greatly impact the team, just kind of reshuffling a bad roster to a bad roster again, but just slightly different and with a little bit more cap flexibility. So the major contender that didn't do anything was the Celtics, so I don't really have anything to say about them besides that they didn't do anything. The Clippers made a ton of trades as well, mainly sending away Tobias Harris and then trading for Zubac and Beasley from the Lakers, and then they gave the Lakers, I believe, Muscala, and of course they got Wilson Chandler from the 76ers for Tobias Harris, and then they got Garrett Temple and JaMychal Green from the Grizzlies in exchange for Avery Bradley, which was an interesting trade. I feel like Avery Bradley's better than both of those guys, but I guess JaMychal Green maybe helps him at the backup power forward spot. Besides that, they again, I think the purpose of their trades with the 76ers mainly was to get draft picks, which they did, a first rounder from Philly and then Miami's first rounder, and then they got more cap flexibility. Um, Wilson Chandler's still an expiring contract. I think they basically didn't want the pressure of having to re-sign Tobias Harris, which they got rid of, and now they kind of cleared the deck to sign some big name free agents, potentially Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard. So Memphis really didn't do that much besides acquiring Avery Bradley. Oh wait, what am I thinking here? They also traded Marc Gasol for Valanciunas and DeLon Wright, which is pretty big. I don't really know why they did it, honestly. Like Valanciunas is just like he's a good center, but he's not as good as Gasol in my opinion. He is quite a bit younger, so they do get a guy that they can build next to Jaren Jackson with, but he's also a free agent at the end of this year, so I don't know if the plan is to try and re-sign him or to let him go and tank. As far as DeLon Wright, 26 years old, good player, but also a free agent at the end of this year. So I don't know if the Grizzlies are trying to re-sign these guys or just let them walk and then really start tanking next year. I don't get what the direction is, but they probably have a plan that I don't really know about. Let's see here. Next notable team. I would have to say it's the Kings, and they acquired Harrison Barnes in exchange for essentially. Um, okay, let me see here. They essentially got Harrison Barnes and Alec Burks in exchange for um, Zach Randolph, who wasn't playing, Justin Jackson, and Iman Shumpert. So basically, they traded guys. If you look at just guys who were playing and being significant contributors, they traded Alec Burks and Harrison Barnes for Iman Shumpert, really, which I think that Burks can basically fill in pretty nice for Shumpert as the backup shooting guard, and then I think Harrison Barnes is a really big upgrade at small forward over Justin Jackson. He can play up tempo and at a high pace like the Kings like to, and he can be that third scoring option behind Fox and Hield that I think would complete their starting lineup. I also like the idea of a court that features Fox, Hield, Barnes, Bjelica, and Willie Cauley-Stein. You basically have four guys that can shoot it at least moderately to good in those four guys besides Cauley-Stein. So I like that spacing that they'd have on the floor. And then obviously you could sub out like Alec Burks for Harrison Barnes if you want to do that, or if you want to put Harrison Barnes at the 4, you could put in Bogdanovich at the 3, and then you'd have a lot of shooting still. And they got a lot of flexibility because Harrison Barnes can play shooting or small forward or power forward. Bogdanovich can play shooting guard or small forward. Bjelica can play power forward or a little bit of small forward. So they've got options, and I like that. And I think that this will probably solidify them as a playoff team this year. The Knicks, of course, traded away Porzingis to the Mavericks in exchange for Dennis Smith Jr. Well, let me back up quick. The Knicks also gave away Tim Hardaway Jr. and Courtney Lee, along with Porzingis, in exchange for Dennis Smith Jr., Wes Matthews, and DeAndre Jordan. So essentially, the Knicks got cap space alleviated along with Dennis Smith Jr. Do I like it for them? I like it if they sign Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, but if they don't get those guys, they basically gave up on a guy who's an all-star for Dennis Smith Jr., who is a good, promising player, but hasn't shown flashes of being an all-star yet. And um, I don't know. I don't think that they'll re-sign DeAndre Jordan really. So this trade just looks okay at this point, but not great yet. But if they sign the free agents, then it looks like a really good trade. Next team I'm going to talk about is the Lakers, who got Reggie Bullock in exchange for Mikhailuk, and then they got Muscala in exchange for Beasley and Zubac, which I don't really get that trade. I think Zubac is slightly better than Muscala, but Muscala can spread it and shoot the three, so that's a plus. As far as giving away Beasley, I heard that him and Luke Walton got in a fight, and that's the main reason that he got traded. Really quiet trade deadline. You would essentially say that the Lakers lost this trade deadline because they didn't really do anything to help elevate the team, and I feel like they'll just be a quiet first round exit in this year's playoffs, which is somewhat disappointing when you feature one of, if not the best player in the game. But that's just what they did, and I think they're going to try and regroup and go after some big names in the off season. So we'll have to wait and see. As far as the Magic, they traded Jonathan Simmons for Fultz. Fultz really fills the point guard void on Orlando. If he comes back and actually plays, that could be a really strong addition for them. Again, he's really unpredictable as far as how good he'll be or how he'll play or if he'll have a mysterious injury pop up. But that being said, hopefully he can work out for Orlando and fill that point guard void for them. But they didn't really give up anything. Jonathan Simmons was having an off year for him, so they basically acquired a really promising point guard who's very young and filled with a lot of potential for a backup guard who wasn't really performing well. Dallas, of course, they acquire Porzingis. Pretty good trade for them, I would say. They also get nice perimeter players in Courtney Lee, who's a good 3-and-D guy, and then Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a good offensive threat. And I think for him, he's going to do well in Dallas because he'll be able to slide into like a third or fourth, probably third option on offense, which I think he does better in, like when he was in Atlanta 2 years ago, than when he's been in New York last year and this year, where he was like when Porzingis went down, he was basically the number one option, which I don't think he did very well with because he's taking so many shots and he was shooting such a bad percentage because so much was expected from him on offense. But as a third option, I think he can be more efficient and shoot like between 38 to 40% from three and be what they need him to be. As far as the Nets, they got Greg Monroe. They didn't really do much else, so that's a pretty good pickup, I suppose. He can be decent as a backup center for them. They don't really need him necessarily, but I like him, so there you go. The Pacers, they got Stauskas and Wade Baldwin and cut them, but that's really not much of a notable trade. They didn't get Mike Conley like a lot of people thought that they might, so pretty ho-hum for them. The Pelicans traded away Mirotic, as I previously discussed with the Bucks, and then they acquired Markieff Morris for, I believe, not very much. Let me see here. What did they give up for Markieff? I think they gave up, let's see here, Wes Johnson. So they didn't really give up anything to get Markieff Morris, who I feel like they're just trying to replace Mirotic because he's an expiring contract, but I don't really know why. I don't really get the point of that trade, but I guess it was trying to replace Morris in the lineup, or excuse me, replace Mirotic in the lineup. Pistons, as I said, acquired Mikhailuk, but didn't really do anything else. They got Thon Maker in exchange for Stanley Johnson, but really nothing much going on with them. The Raptors got Marc Gasol, as I said previously, for DeLon Wright and Valanciunas. I think that this is a really good trade for the Raptors in that Marc Gasol, I think, is better than Valanciunas, even though they're having about the same quality of year. Gasol is a better defender than Valanciunas and can basically bring everything Valanciunas can on offense. Although he is older, I think he will do well in Toronto. When he was doing his best in Memphis, like being an all-star and a defensive player of the year, that was when his offensive load wasn't nearly as big as it is now. You had Zach Randolph, and then for a time Rudy Gay was in there, OJ Mayo, Mike Conley. Those guys were usually all ahead of Gasol as far as like the pecking order on offense. So okay, so like let's even take away Rudy Gay and OJ Mayo because they weren't there for that long with that core of the grit and grind era. But Zach Randolph was like the one option, and then sometimes Conley was the two, and then Gasol was the three. I think he operates best in a scenario like that when he can be the third option on offense. That's what he will be in Toronto. It'll probably go pecking order: Kawhi, Lowry, and probably like Kawhi, Lowry, and then you could probably say like a three-way tie between like Ibaka, Siakam, and Marc Gasol for the third option on offense. But I think his shooting numbers will increase because he'll just be playing with better players. There'll be better opportunities. Kyle Lowry is, oh, Mike Conley's just as good as Kyle Lowry, I think, as a point guard, but just with better players like Kawhi attracting a lot more attention, you'll get more open looks for Gasol, and then with additional spacing like Ibaka and Siakam and Danny Green, you'll have more space for Gasol to either operate at the top of the key, which he likes to do, or in the low post, or shoot from three. A bunch of different options for him. But I think that this is a good trade for him and the Raptors, that they get a defensive upgrade at center while keeping all the offense that Valanciunas brought. As far as giving up DeLon Wright, it's a tough pill to swallow. He's a good backup guard, but keyword is backup, whereas Marc Gasol is an all-star caliber center, so I think it's worth it. The Rockets didn't really do much, gave up James Ennis and acquired Iman Shumpert, and they gave up Brandon Wright and Marquise Chris, and that's really about it. So the really only notable addition was getting Shumpert. I think they just want to replace James Ennis, essentially. Okay, let's see here. The Suns, they didn't really do much. Here they got Tyler Johnson, and then they got Wayne Ellington, who a lot of people think that they might cut. They did that in a trade with the Heat, and I don't remember what they gave up, but it wasn't that much as I recall. But I think that if they do keep Wayne Ellington, he'll be a good spacer for them. But if they get rid of him, I can see that too, just because they have a crowded wing depth. As far as what they gave up, it's Ryan Anderson, who's really not even playing for them, so not that big of a deal. But they did acquire Tyler Johnson, who can basically be a backup point guard or a starting point guard if they want him to start at point guard, which I could see them wanting him to. As far as other notable trades, the Trailblazers picked up Rodney Hood, which is a good trade for them. Get additional scoring off the bench. I like that. They didn't really give up much of anything for him. Nick Stauskas and Caleb Swanigan, so not really that much. And then as for the Wizards, the last team to do some notable deals on here, they got Portis and Parker for Otto Porter, and then they got Wesley Johnson for Markieff Morris. So as far as like notable additions and subtractions, I feel like they essentially traded Otto Porter and Markieff for Jabari Parker and Bobby Portis. So like I don't really know how much you could say they gained, because I feel like they gave up basically as much talent as they got. But that being said, they did make some moves. So there you go, guys. That's sort of my review of some of the major teams who did stuff during the deadline. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, found it informative. It was a pretty broad overview. I didn't get into too many specifics. I didn't want to make like 5 videos on the trade deadline just because I feel like I'd be oversaturating the channel with videos on that. So I hope you guys find this just like a good brief overview, and you can kind of catch up on what happened without having to go too in depth into everything. I hope you guys have a good day, and I hope that I see you soon. Bye.